Hello, my friend. This is Clyde. Hey, farmer, start sowing right now. I'm reading Galatians 6, verse 7 and 8. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let me ask you a question. What have you been sowing, reaping recently? I know that the idea of sowing is not very popular in today's age, but let us take some time and think about this important feature of life. We have a text before us that is broken down into strong statements. The first statement tells us the outcome of sowing, and the second statement tells us what to sow. So the first statement says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The principle of sowing and reaping originated with God. There's no shortcut, no alternative, no way to avoid it. God practices it, and he tells us that whether we want to or not, we are engaged in that practice. The fundamental principle here is you reap what you sow. Sounds like common sense, right? You cannot sow pumpkin seeds and expect to reap squash. You cannot sow mangoes and expect to reap grapes. It is impossible. Try it if you don't believe me. And why is that so? Because all the distinct features of a plant, of a fruit, of a vegetable, or a flower, all its characteristics are locked in the seed. And so when the seed is immersed in the soil and it is watered, it creates the right context for the seed to burst open and start to do its thing. It starts to grow and it grows into its own kind, so that when the time comes for reaping, you are bound to reap what you sow. The second statement goes straight to the heart of the matter. It speaks about the two kinds of seeds that are available to us. Bear in mind that these two kinds of seeds are diametrically opposed to each other. So firstly, the writer says that if you sow to please the flesh, then you will reap what you sow. Destruction. That is the first kind of seed. What does it mean by sowing to please the flesh? It's at this point I want to clarify something. When the Bible talks about flesh, it is referring to our human tendencies and desires that are all the total opposites of what God stands for. So I go back to a previous chapter of the book of Galatians, chapter 5, and it gives me a list of flesh seeds which we should not sow. These include sexual immorality, impurity and indecency, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, strife or discord, jealousy, fits of rage or anger, selfishness, dissensions, groups with peculiar and bad practices, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and carousing. Wow, that is quite some list of bad seeds. In fact, in that very section, the writer warns us that if we sow those seeds, we will not inherit or we will not be a part of God's kingdom. If you stop and think about it, some of these things we find that we are like that. Some are big, ugly, and shameful practices, but there are some in the list that we engage in sometimes, and we tell ourselves that we would not let it get out of control. Or maybe you might be thinking that I'm way better than to be engaged in such practices. But is that really true? Regardless, the writer says that if you sow these seeds, if you engage in practicing these things, then expect that your life is going to be miserable, that you're going to suffer because of it. You are going to sow what you reap. The second piece is the alternative. If you sow to the Spirit, you will reap eternal life. Again, I go over to Galatians 5, and I see the seeds of the Spirit that you can sow. It says, this list of seeds consists of love, joy, peace, even temper, kindness, goodness, meekness, humility, gentleness, self-control. Did you hear that? This list sounds like someone who is perfect. But it's not about perfection. Rather, it is about being deliberate and intentional in sowing the right seeds. Now let me say something. The seeds of the flesh can be considered normal human tendencies. The seeds of the Spirit seem idealistic and high standards and might seem unattainable. But stop and match the two statements before us. One statement is the principle, which says you reap what you sow. The second statement tells us that you have two sets of seeds, the seeds of the flesh and the seeds of the Spirit. The text says that the seeds of the flesh are bound to bring you fruits of destruction. The seeds of the Spirit, however, are guaranteed to bring you into eternal life. My question to you is, which outcome do you want? What fruit do you want to reap when it is time to harvest? Can you honestly say that you are willing to settle for destruction? I didn't think so. Because the destruction that is talked about here is that of reaping a miserable and awful life later on and eventually ending up in hell forever. On the other hand, the seeds of the Spirit will bring you a better quality life and eventually you will end up in heaven forever. I think I've made a strong case, and that is for you to think wisely. The seeds of the flesh for now looks easy and fun, but look at what you will reap. The seeds of the Spirit could be considered boring and unpopular and takes so much effort, but the harvest will be so worth it. My friend, my farmer friend, the time for sowing is right now. Sow wisely and reap nothing but the best.